They didn't have any really devastating long-term injuries that really tested the depth. That's not a criticism, it's a reality. The odds aren't good that that's going to happen again. The difference between last year and this year is with the roster that they have currently, they have the opportunity now to build that depth. Welcome to this episode of the Mazza's Musings podcast. Man, I just love that sound. And look, it's been really hot here in Massachusetts, Western Massachusetts especially. It was north of 90 today. And the other thing that's really been heating up is the talk about the NFL draft. Now, the New England Patriots are looking to build upon, and it may sound silly to say build upon when you're talking about a season that ended in a Super Bowl appearance, but that's 100% what they're looking to do. They're looking to build upon that success. And when you look at it, both from the results on the field of that Super Bowl and, well, really they benefited from a lot of circumstance that helped them get as far as they did, on top of the gains that they made both in the locker room and on the field. But there were circumstances that propelled them to the Super Bowl, and maybe they weren't quite a Super Bowl team. Now, in addition to the result on the field against Seattle, you can kind of hear it in the comments that Mike Vrabel and Elliot Wolf have made. And it's really looking at this from the perspective of this was still year one of building a program. So keeping with that idea, yes, they are still very much building, and this draft is another building block. So Greg Cameron, friend of the podcast, came on last week, and he talks a lot of sports with us, but he's also a big music buff and aficionado. And he and I talked about blending sports and music and how our feelings about sports can be illustrated by certain songs. Well, now we're taking a look at feels a little differently. We're seeing how good our feel for what the New England Patriots are going to do really is. And so we are going to be talking this week about the draft approach that we would take and what we think they'd take. And we try to reflect that in our mock drafts. So it'll be interesting to see how we would go with this, and then how the New England Patriots go with this when the draft comes around. But of course, before we get into anything else, we usually like to feel happy with Meghan's Cuckoo Bananas Joke of the Week. But before that, there was something that I wanted to touch on. And I mentioned our past episode with the music selections that really reflect our feelings about our sports teams. And I put something out there on social media asking other people what they feel about their sports teams and what song might represent that. And I got a couple of responses, and one of them was, of course, from my darling wife, Eileen, who pointed out Buttercup. Build Me Up Buttercup. She said for pretty much every team in her life at some point, getting lifted up only to be let down. The other one was, and I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with who he's talking about or what the song is, but Todd Hoffman, who is the co-host of the Big T Little T podcast, they have been on previously, and he's also one of the hosts of WSTR. So a couple of really great Star Wars podcasts that are in my rotation, and I definitely recommend that you do the same. So Todd said something here. It's now I'm not familiar with this artist. It's DJO, which I'm not sure if that's an acronym for something or what, but or if it's pronounced a certain way. But anyway, the song is called End of Beginning. And Todd is a Chicago Bears fan. So I'm not exactly sure where this song puts him in the emotional spectrum. So I guess I've got to listen up. But if anybody can fill me in on that, including you, Todd, please let me know. All right. And now that we've gotten through that, let's laugh.
And now it's time for Meghan's
Cuckoo Bananas Joke.
Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Do you have a joke for us today?
Yes.
All right, let's hear it.
Why did the man put cheese in the trap next to the computer?
I don't know. Why did the man put cheese in a trap next to his computer?
Because he wanted to catch a mouse.
Of course, could also just have a cat to catch a mouse, right? Meow.
You did it that time, not
Yes,
me.
I know. Well, with the number of times that you make cat sounds for no reason, I figured I'd give you a reason to make a cat sound. Meow. All right, say goodnight.
Good night, good night, good night, good night. Good night.
And now let's get into this week's Mazza's Mickey Minute, which I can tell you is going from 0 to 60.
Donald, wake up! It's showtime! Don't forget the orchestra!
Ah, there you are. And just in time.
Mom says there's even more magical stuff now.
For those of you standing, please hold on to the handrails throughout our journey and stay clear of the doors.
Hang on to them hats and glasses, cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
And here we go!
All right, so obviously now we've known for a while that Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith was taken offline, and they've been retheming it and repurposing it for the Muppets. And there's been all kinds of talks about how people feel about that, and everybody's got their opinion on that. And that's not really what I'm looking to get into here. What I am looking into is the truly Fast and Furious kind of publicity push that Disney has put out there this week that kind of answers some of the questions that people have had about this ride. So we're going to go through some of that. And I'm taking tidbits that I've both seen on social media and that I've read in the Disney Parks blog to kind of put this together. And I also went out into the social media sphere to get some reaction from people, especially after seeing what the set list is that they've now announced in full. So when we're going to start out here with what the story is. And the story has been updated for this ride, and it's going to center on Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. And they're heading to Hollywood for a big concert. And of course, being the Muppets, there's some kind of hijinks and some kind of issue that's preventing them from getting there. So, of course, in a nod to the old ride, they are part of G-Force Records. And so when you first come into the queue, you're walking through G-Force Records. And among other things, there's going to be an audio animatronic scooter that's going to be there. And some of the concept art that I've seen has also seen like the penguins operating the soundboard for the recording studio. So when you get through the queue and you end up in the actual ride, of course, you're still getting into a ride vehicle that looks like a limo. It's a stretch limo. Now, in this case, limo is an acronym, LIMO, and that stands for Lengthy Immediate Motion Object. So once you're on the ride and you're going through it, there's going to be a soundtrack that features 5 songs. There's Song 2 by The Blur, Born to Be Wild, Love Roller Coaster, Rock Till You Drop, and Walking on Sunshine. And so this is also going to feature some guest artists, including Jennifer Hudson, Questlove, Def Leppard, and Kelly Clarkson. And by the way, the graphic that they've put on social media for this also shows that one of the tracks, I believe it's Born to Be Wild, features Camilla the Chicken. So in addition to celebrity cameos and such, there's going to be some of that classic Muppet silliness. There are also going to be other celebrity cameos throughout this thing, I think mostly in the queue. But they're going to be Aquafina, who, if you're not familiar, she's a comedian, and for Disney, she was Sisu in Raya and the Last Dragon. Let's see, there's also going to be Danny Trejo, John Stamos, and Neil Patrick Harris, who are 2 of the most recognizable celebrity Disney adults. Travis Barker, Wayne Brady, and someone who I hope is going to have a pretty big role in this, which is Weird Al Yankovic. So there's a little bit of a rundown on what's going to be going on and happening with the ride. Now, one of the things that's been a major question is how the music is going to tie in with the Muppets and things like that, and how the ride, how it's all going to coalesce. And one thing that I thought about some of the songs, and I'm still a little curious, is how they fit with the Electric Mayhem, because something like Song 2 is really amped up. It's really high octane. And you think about the Electric Mayhem and you think about Dr. Teeth and Janice, and they're kind of more laid back kind of people, man. So I'm curious as to how that's going to work, but maybe that, like, Song 2 is something that has more of an animal feature to it. So who knows? But like I said, I put this out there on social media to get some reaction. And one question that came up from my buddy Dan, who's been on the podcast many times to talk about Disney, he was curious about how the songs are going to work. Like, is it going to be like Cosmic Rewind, where we have one song and it's kind of a rotation of what's going to do what, or is it going to be more like the original Rock and Roller Coaster, which had it also rotated, but it was rotating different mixes. There are usually 2 or 3 songs per, depending on what you ended up with. So with 5 songs, I feel like the ride isn't really long enough to have all 5 crammed into one soundtrack. So I don't honestly know how they're going to work that, if it's going to be one big medley or if it's going to be some kind of rotation. So beyond that, I also heard from Rick, who's the WDW beer guy, who was also on the podcast recently. And he was just like, no Aerosmith. And I thought there might be a little bit more of a nod to Aerosmith in this retheme. But my guess is, with there not being, it probably has something to do with licensing or contracts or something like that. So when I think about it now, I'm not overly surprised, but it was something I kind of expected more of. Let's see. We also heard from Jen from Dillo's Diz, who said, if I were to go on the ride, which I have before, but no longer can handle, I would want to hear Song 2 because I think it definitely fits with the ride. But as a backup, I like the idea of Walking on Sunshine. Now, Walking on Sunshine, if I remember correctly, is featuring Kelly Clarkson. So I can see how that would be a fun kind of thing for this, a little different kind of upbeat kind of thing. At the same time, I think that some of the picks for music that they did, they're trying to appeal to a wider audience. Let's see. We also had Joe Umick, who's been on the podcast before, namely the Disney Dads episode, the Disney Dudes episode comes to mind. We did 2 separate episodes of Disney Dads and Disney Dudes, and he was on the Disney Dudes one. He said that he was hoping for a hard rock version of the Muppet Classic, Manana. Now that would have been something. That would have been fun to pull off. But I also do wonder, questions about who owns what, etc. I know that Disney owns pretty much all of Muppets, but are there certain things, if they're written by certain people, that they don't have license for? I don't know. So it's purely speculation on my part. And Mike Lavalette, who was also on a previous podcast talking about fitness goals, that was not all that long ago. It was probably January, probably. But anyway, he said, who doesn't love Questlove? Now, I would put myself among that, mostly because I don't know who Questlove is. So anyway, I think the big thing that I hope people take away from this is, and I know I'm feeding into this by asking people for immediate reaction, but I hope people give this a chance. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to believe in everything that Disney does. You don't have to think, oh, well, this is the greatest thing ever just because Disney put it out there. And I can certainly appreciate some people didn't want Aerosmith theming to go away. I think there were forces that made that happen outside of, any of our control. I also don't want people just getting hung up on what they thought should have happened with it. And people have their opinions on what should have happened with the Muppets. There are people who had other concepts for the ride. Those things have passed. This is what the ride is now. So judge it for what it is. And if you have the chance to experience it and then you still don't like it, that's fine. But go in with an open mind is all that I'm saying. Don't try to put your preconceived notions about it aside until you've had a chance to truly experience it. And then if you still don't like it after that, then, well, that's totally valid. All I'm saying is let's not jump to conclusions about this. There's a real just societal issue with wanting things to be exactly the way you want them and getting really upset when they're not. And that's not just a Muppets thing. It's not just a Disney thing. It happens in Star Wars. Truly, most fandoms have that kind of issue. So all I'm saying is let's try to buck the trend a little bit and just see how it goes. And that is this week's Mezza's Mickey Minute. Now, of course, this ride goes from 0 to 60 in no time at all. And it can feel like your upcoming Disney trip is going 0 to 60 as well. Now, if you're feeling that way, I have to say you should be using We Do Travel Right, because We Do Travel Right will help you out with the one-on-one service of an agent, but that agent has the power of a team behind them, making sure that everything that you need for your trip is handled and that it's the right trip for your family and the right trip for your budget. And the best thing about We Do Travel Right's services is they are free. That's right. You do not pay anything extra to use We Do Travel Right. That's because Disney, Universal, cruise lines, all-inclusives, they all build the use of an agent into their pricing already. So you're already paying for it. So doesn't it just make sense to use the agent? So if you're ready to get your next magical vacation started today, head to WeDoTravelRight.com wedotravelright.com/Mazza. That's wedotravelright.com/MAZA.
Now I can't do any more damage around this popsicle stand.
So long.
See you real soon.
Right. So let's roll right into the draft talk now. And we both did our own separate mock drafts. Now, we usually talk about the parameters, what we're using for it, what settings we're using, and we didn't really do that this time. So I'm just going to, before we get into the deeper discussion, just in the interest of full disclosure, I used the PFN, the Pro Football Network mock draft simulator.
I did too.
Set to the consensus rankings.
As did I.
And last time we used a different one that had similar consensus rankings. This one's a little bit easier to just use from a functionality standpoint, I feel. So
less ads.
Went with that one this year. Less ads too. Yeah. The ad, well, that's part of the functionality. I'd go to click on something and there's an ad. But
right.
So, and we should really make sure that we note that what happened in our individual drafts was not identical. Like what the computer was picking was also not. So what we were picking was also on top of our own philosophy on how we would approach the draft or how we think the team will approach the draft. It's also a reaction to what's been put in front of us. So while there may be times where our picks differ, but had we been presented with the exact same scenario, we may have picked the same thing.
Totally.
All right. So before we get into the actual unveiling of the mock drafts, I wanted to talk a little bit about the approach.
Sure.
We talked, during the music discussion, we did talk a little bit about how we were satisfied to a point with the offseason thus far, and that the signings that they've made all seem to make sense. There's been a lot of talk about whether or not the team is better after this offseason, air quotes, quote unquote, but the offseason's not over yet, and the draft is a big part of that. So when I'm looking at this, where the team stands now, and also looking a little bit ahead, I think that the biggest need for this team isn't an individual position. I think that the same issue that I had with the roster last year is the problem that I have with the roster this year, and that's depth. And you look at some positions, edge, offensive line, especially at tackle, linebacker, especially Marte Mapu just got traded, and you lost Gibbons, running back to an extent. This was a team this was a problem for me last year, and it never presented itself as a problem because the Patriots did not have much of a problem with attrition. Yes, they lost some people for a certain amount of time, but they didn't have any really devastating long-term injuries that really tested the depth, which some people took me as criticizing the team when I pointed out they've been fortunate that they've been healthy. That's not a criticism. It's a reality. Like there's a difference. The odds aren't good that that's going to happen again. The difference between last year and this year is with the roster that they have currently, they have the opportunity now to build that depth through the draft and draft players who can be in that sort of pipeline to replace some of those starting players at this point. I don't think that this is a particularly top heavy draft from the standpoint of like elite talent in the top 10 or so, but I think that especially at some positions, there is a fair amount of talent to choose from. So that is, my bigger point. If we're looking at starting groups, I think the weakest one is edge. Getting that, because you look at, especially with the uncertainty of the health of certain veterans, there's a real question mark there. And really, they didn't manage to get at the quarterback very well last year. They lost Chase on. Granted, they replaced him, but again, most of the pressure that they were able to put on last year was schemed. And I think it's really hard to consistently scheme pressure. If you have those guys that you can put on the edge and they can get at the quarterback, it makes all of those other pieces, you can find other ways to manufacture more pressure if you want to, but it's not a necessity. Because when you're scheming things up and you're bringing those linebackers in from the second level, you're weakening your intermediate and everything. So I think that if you have those guys who can really get home, it just relaxes everything else for your defense. The other thing is, I would not stop taking swings at wide receiver.
I kind of also feel that way.
And, I know that they have, now there are a couple of things here. They only have a few guys who are under contract beyond this year. Dobbs being one of them, Efton Chisholm being another, and the third is escaping me. I think there are three.
Is it Kyle Williams?
Kyle Williams, thank you. And that brings up my second. That actually leads to my second point. I can't believe I forgot Kyle Williams, because this is my second point with the receiver group. I'm not saying that Kyle Williams is at all a lost cause.
No, I don't think so either.
But what I am going to say is my optimism is not particularly high. Let me tell you why.
He's got more to prove.
Let me tell you why. Now, I will say he has a notable trait. He has something that you can point to and say, this is something that can be difference making, and that's his speed. And we saw that at a couple different points during the season. With that said, I've compiled a list of receivers that were taken in rounds 1 to 3 that caught 20 or fewer passes in their first year.
Oh man, you came correct.
I went as far back as 2015.
Okay.
But I can do the last 5 years if you'd like. I'll leave that up to you.
I'm going to let you present your dissertation.
Okay. Since 2015, since you're letting me, since you've let go of the rope here, here I go.
Your house, dude.
All right. Now remember, this is rounds 1 through 3, so we're throwing out, all of those flyers that teams have taken on guys. These are guys that, because rounds 1 through 3, you're expecting contributors.
Sure.
Everything else is a dart throw as far as I'm concerned. 20 or fewer catches in their first year. Kevin White, Philip Dorsett, Devin Smith, old friend, Devin Smith, Jalen Strong, Chris Conley,
Georgia guy,
Sammy Coates,
Auburn guy,
Ty Montgomery, who became a running
back-ish, old friend,
Josh Doxson,
TCU,
Laquan Treadwell,
Ole Miss. Ooh.
Braxton Miller,
Oh yeah. Okay.
Leonte Carew,
Ooh.
John Ross,
Ohio State, Cincinnati Bengal, drafted really high, didn't do anything. Sorry.
Curtis Samuel. Okay.
Solid veteran. Solid.
Taywan Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Ardarius Stewart.
Not a name I recognize.
Carlos Henderson.
Also not a name I recognize.
Amara Darbo.
Wait, where'd he go? Where'd he go to college?
I don't
okay.
have the list of the.
Sorry.
I just wrote the names.
Okay.
James Washington.
Okay.
DJ Chark.
Hey.
Paris
People
Campbell.
here wanted the Patriots to sign DJ Chark.
Yes, exactly. Paris Campbell.
Speedy.
The pride of UMass, Andy Isabella. Jalen Hurd.
Tennessee.
Miles Boykin.
Yep.
Brian Edwards. Devin Duvernay.
Raven, super speedy, good punt returner.
Dwayne Eskridge.
Oh, God, he went to a directional Michigan.
It was a Western Michigan?
I thought it was Central
Michigan. It was
Michigan.
Western Michigan. Anyway.
It was a directional Michigan.
Tutu Atwell.
Who's done fairly well for the Rams.
He hasn't done anything for the Rams.
He's been okay.
He's been there.
He's been there.
He really has. He hasn't.
He's been marked present at attendance.
Terrace Marshall, who was not. Dayami Brown.
Dayami Brown, who we liked going into that draft, by the way.
We did. Anthony Schwartz.
Yep.
Another guy we liked going into that draft, John Mechie.
Oh, we love John Mechie.
John Mechie, there were some extenuating circumstances.
There was a cancer thing.
Yeah. Velas Jones Jr.
Oh, God.
Yuck. Jalen Tolbert, who made himself a career as a returner.
Yeah.
Danny Gray. Trey Tucker.
Yep. Name I recognize.
Yeah, that's about it. Old friend Jalen Polk.
Oh, don't remind me.
Malachi Corley.
Yeah, that's a name I recognize.
Jermaine Burton.
Alabama guy.
Yep. Another guy we liked, Roman Wilson.
We did like Roman Wilson. Out of Michigan.
Yep. Luke McCaffrey.
Who I still like, even though I think that offense in Washington kind of stinks.
But here's the thing, is just like, remember that we're talking about these are all top 100-ish picks.
Yeah, totally.
So these are picks that, like, if you're like, oh, well, that guy kind of had a game where he, they had that 1 8-catch game. Yeah. That's not what you're looking for here. So then we go to Jack Besh.
Oh yeah, who was
TCU?
TCU. Yeah.
Kyle
Raiders.
Williams.
He's Raiders, right?
I don't recall him, but I think he's Raiders. Isaac Tesla,
who had some okay games in Detroit,
and Savion Williams.
Oh yeah.
It's not a good list. That's a poor list. So we'll put it this way. The odds are stacked against a player who does not make an impact beyond 20 catches in his first year. Unless you have prowess in the kicking game.
Right.
And they tried him there. It wasn't, the Patriots were one of the worst in the league at returns after they lost Antonio Gibson. I think that had a lot more to do with just the returner, but so I think you got to keep taking swings in at the position. And it
I think
doesn't
they do.
necessarily mean you've got now. You don't necessarily have to take, you know, top 100 picks every year. But
Mhm.
the point is, just because you look at the Patriots room and it's crowded with bodies doesn't necessarily mean that you can't take a swing and see if somebody can displace one of those bodies.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
There's room for somebody to really step up and become the guy.
Oh, there's another name that fell off of my list when I was formatting this thing. Ty Felton.
Okay.
So there you go.
Not to be like that meme of I do not know this man. But I do not know this man.
So those are the main takeaways that I have when I'm approaching this draft is
I agree.
Edge is the biggest starting position concern that I have. I would not shy away from drafting wide receivers.
Same.
And I think that there is that there are pieces throughout that can be depth pieces to start and work their way up into those starting roles.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I am.
Okay. Do you want me to start after? Do you want me to? I mean, I feel like because you're at home here, I feel like you ought to get last ups. So here's my question.
Okay.
In your mock, how many trades did you do?
Let's see. One.
Because I only did one.
Two.
Okay, I only did one. And we can put in the ESPN music if we want to for each of these. But in my head, do you have a soundboard that does this?
Hold on. Give me a sec.
Oh, this is. Thank you. With the 31st pick in the 2026 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Max Ianichor, offensive tackle, Arizona State. Here's the thing. Mike Vrabel will telegraph his crushes when it comes to the draft. I am only talking about the NFL Draft. I am not talking about anything else. I am only talking about the NFL Draft. And well my God, at that pro day in Tempe, he was fighting with Max like he fought with his former draft boo in Will Campbell. That just seems like a guy like, but I think also size wise and technique wise, that is the exact right guy that Morgan Moses is just gonna like take in during OTAs and just be like, oh buddy, do I have knowledge and stuff to tell you? And this kid, he is big as a house. And I get the like thought of like, why are you going to take a tackle 2 years in a row? But you take this guy because he's going to be your right tackle of the future. People forget the Patriots took Sebastian Vollmer in the second round. He was a second rounder in 2009. They also had like 3 or 4 second rounders that year. It was a weird draft. Weird. But like, when it comes to kind of an organizational philosophy, that next guy, they find him, and especially if they have a vet at that spot that's going to like impart that knowledge. And I feel like that's a Vrabel thing too. Vrabel's going to find a guy who's going to literally download the brain space from the guy who's the incumbent in that position and kind of take all of that information and then synthesize it. Is a guy like Max that like, I will tell you what the one sentence thing in The Beast by Dane Brugler, which is a publication that you and I both love, and I feel like we ought to plug it and link it in the show notes.
Yeah, it was perfect that it came out today when we are recording. Today. It was fate.
But I'm going to read what the one sentence thing on the top of the Max Ianichor page was. fluid athlete for his size, but may need a year of development before being NFL ready. Does that not sound like a guy who should go to the Morgan Moses School of Offensive Tackle Matriculation?
Yeah, I think you're right in that sense. Especially you think about this is a guy who has all the physical tools, but he's relatively, I mean, especially for a guy being drafted at that point in the draft, he is relatively new to football. I mean, he came from I think he came from Nigeria as a teenager and didn't initially play football, and then got introduced to American football, and so he has been essentially getting a crash course. So a lot of his issues and his problem areas are things that are coachable, teachable, and this would be a place in New England where he wouldn't be put in a position where he'd have to do some heavy lifting right off the bat, because on top of everything else, they did sign a veteran, swing tackle, so to speak.
They did.
So there is less, and I know that people hate the idea of basically redshirting your first year or your first round pick. But if that's the pick, this seems like the most logical place that you would do that.
Yeah, and like I think the other part of it, does this not seem like the perfect ball of clay for Doug Marrone to like mold, turn into like a mauler, and turn into like that exact type of right tackle that they want? Like if I don't quite remember like Vollmer's. I made this pick sort of in that thought of like, who's the next Sebastian Vollmer? Who's that guy who can be that right tackle and like grow into it a little bit? And so, Ian Achor was that thought for me of like that guy who's gonna like grow into it and become that guy. And he's so big and just a mauler. And Vrabel seemed to like absolutely fall for him in that workout of like, oh no, I like this guy. He can take what I give him. Like, and that's what that felt like. So how the board fell, Blake Miller had already been taken. I know that he's a guy that you and I have talked about out of Clemson, who sort of seems very much like the like, plug and play, like ready, like will be ready in a year, could be ready now kind of guy. But like, I looked at it from the mindset of let's give Moses that next year and to sort of be that offensive line captain and be that guy and be like the teacher that he can be during the week and be the guy on Sundays is like, see what I did? You do that. You do that to that guy. So that was my first
All right.
pick.
So, do we want to go back and forth, or do you want to go through yours, or do we want to interchange?
We can go back and forth. I feel like
right,
we're
let's
good
go
at
back
that.
and forth. That'll keep it. Yeah. All right. So, with now looking at this, I didn't love the options that were on the board at 31.
Okay.
And the Cardinals called and offered me 34 and 104.
Good deal.
For 31 and the 7th round pick this year.
Great.
So I moved down those few spots, and with the 37th pick, with the 34th pick in the NFL draft, I went with Cassius Howell, Texas A&M. Now there are some questions about his length, but the one thing that the Patriots, especially Mike Vrabel and the coaching staff, have really been talking about on the defensive side of the ball is honestly violence. And this guy brings it. He's fast and he's violent and
he's mean.
Even if he's part of a rotation, he's someone who would have a year one role, probably a day one role, but projects as somebody who could take on more of that. I mean, even if his long-term ceiling is, designated pass rusher, this is a scheme where there's a place for that. So that is my first pick. He's just a guy who's he's high motor, fast. I said it before, violent. There's a lot to like about him. And honestly, if you're looking at this point in the draft, you're looking at guys who are not sterling prospects. There's something that, whether it's health, whether it's some kind of measurable, whether it's off the field stuff, that has dropped them out of that. So when I'm looking at this, I also was considering, now, yes, we need edge, and edge is deep in this draft. So did I want to get somebody, knowing that how good this edge class is, like, do I want somebody who's near the top of that edge class? Or do I want to wait and know that I'll still get a pretty good player if I took somebody further down the board? And I decided that, no, I want one of the best players at a position of need. Now, I'm not drafting for need necessarily, but it just marries up that one of the best players on the board at that point is also an area of need for the team.
Interesting. I think it's very interesting that you went edge first, especially after your soliloquy at the beginning of this exercise of that edge. I think edge also is a need for this team. And that's certainly where I went with my second round pick, but I want to talk about Cassius Howell. I watched certainly a few games of Texas A&M, and Cassius Howell was one of those guys on the defensive side of the ball. And A&M is coached by Mike Elko, who is a no-nonsense coach who just, the programs that he builds, they are no-nonsense, and Howell is a no-nonsense player. And that's exactly the kind of player, for the edge that the Patriots need. They need a guy who's like that. He went before my pick at 31. That's why I pivoted to tackle. And then went to edge with my second round pick. But man, Howell, he seems like one of those guys that Vrabel would bring into the building and just be like, hey, do you want to download everything in my brain? Do you want to also go up the hall and talk to Terrence, or who was it? Who was the defensive coordinator? Potentially Williams. Forget, his first name escapes me. Who was going to be
Patriots?
Yeah. Who
Yeah,
brought in that violent culture?
Right.
Terrell Williams. Terrell,
thank you. I kept wanting to say Terrence, and I knew that wasn't right.
That's same.
Thank you.
And that's why I vamped. And that's why I vamped for a while. But, hey, do you want to go up the hall and talk to Terrell Williams, who's gonna give you our ethos? He's the guy who knows who we are. Talk to him. And I think Cassius Howell and the guy who I took in my second round pick feel very similarly to that. Of a thumper on the edge. They need somebody who's going to get after the quarterback and just eat his lunch and they need a speedy guy. I think about a lot of the edge guys the Patriots have had who have been even good, not great. One of my favorite years as a Patriots fan was the year that they had both Andre Carter and Mark Anderson. I loved Andre Carter. Andre Carter, good, not great. But they could use a guy on the edge who's good, not great. I love Harold Landry. I do. I love the leadership he brings, but all that. But they need a guy who's going to get a few more results than he does. And I think Howell's one of those guys that can do that for them. early in this draft.
And it also, I mean, I don't want to talk bad about Landry. He was playing through something the entire year.
Totally.
So, it's not entire, but that's part of the, the question and concern is what level of health is he at this point? So
I agree.
That's where we are. All right. So your second round pick.
My second round pick with the 63rd pick in the NFL draft, the Patriots select Gabe Jacas, edge out of Illinois.
I believe it's Yakis.
Is it Yakis?
I believe it's Yakis. And if you listen to what's his name? Alex Barth, he says Akis. He says it's a silent J, and I don't buy that.
Okay, so anyway. Gabe Akis, Yakis. I'm going to read the first little snippet. I tried to take stuff from the Beast today that would help bolster my case. And about Gabe Yakis, a quick, aggressive pass rusher whose power and technique should translate well in the NFL. So the Illinois program, I really like what they've done in the last several years. The results have not been there. But the coaches that they have are people who have NFL experience over the last several years. Previously, right now you've got Brett Bielema there who kind of did some work with the Patriots and was really good at Wisconsin. And then before that was Lovie Smith, who I loved the idea of Lovie Smith in college. That's a guy who his job is prepare these guys for the next level. He seems like the perfect internship coordinator at a college of prepare these guys for the working world. And I think them getting a guy at 63 like Yakis, who can move like he does and is quick and aggressive, especially the quick and aggressive part. They need somebody who is speedy on the edge and mean and is willing to just move up field. They need that. They need somebody young. I think a guy who's been coached by two really good college coaches in both Lovie Smith and Bielema, that's the perfect guy that the Patriots should take at 63.
Yeah, he was someone that I was considering before I took Howell, and I just decided that Howell was sitting right there. So, but he was somebody who the profile I like as well. I read the Beast the same way you did, and thought that was a guy who was really good to have. But I think we're both in agreement that investing in edge high is something that something that needs to happen. So. My second pick, actually, I did not pick at 63. I saw that
two trades in a row.
In my scenario, there was a player who was falling down the board, and I was just watching him for a while, and then I started getting a little antsy. It's just like I don't want to. I like this guy enough that I don't want to wait to see if he's going to fall to me all the way down to me. So I moved up. I traded 63 and 171 to Philadelphia to move up to 58. And with...
Play a little sound.
With the 58th pick in the NFL draft, I drafted C.J. Allen, linebacker from Georgia. Now, I think
he's
linebackers...
a guy we love.
He's and it's a sneaky need. You look at the linebacker room, especially now, and linebacker is a position that I figured I would be taking a linebacker at some point. But I figured it was probably going to be in the 4th, 5th round range. And this really kind of took another guy that I really liked off of my board a bit. But when a guy with this level of talent who can really be a building block for your team moving forward, I felt like it was a guy that I had to draft. Now, I'm thinking about it. I don't think that they have a linebacker under contract going into next year outside of Robert Spillane. So it's a position that is wide open beyond this year at this point.
I agree.
Now, Dane Brugler gave him like a Nick Bolton kind of comparison.
And that's a player I like. I like Nick Bolton a lot.
Bleacher Report said Devin Lloyd and Quay Walker. Now, Quay Walker had his off-field stuff, but I don't think that they're really comparing that. They're looking physically.
Mm-hmm.
And PFN compared him to Patrick Queen. I'm pretty sure that any of those would be a good guy to have in the middle of your defense. So, so that's where I went with that. So I moved up to 58, grabbed Allen.
I will tell you, I did take a linebacker in my draft, but I took a linebacker later in a very similar scenario of how is this guy here? kind of scenario.
All right, next pick.
Okay, so I made a trade with the Denver Broncos at 95. I gave them 95 and picked 247 for 108 in the 4th round and next year's 4th for the Broncos. It was created well. It was a net kind of even trade. So at pick 108, my New England Patriots selected Zachariah Branch, wide receiver, Georgia. Okay, I get it. He's small. He's a water bug. But the thing is, he's really good. He's really fast and, like, is reliable. Like, I think about, like, reliable football players, and he was another one of these, like, how the board kept dropping for me it was a lot of, how is this guy here? And how is Zachariah Branch here at 108? And I'll do the small little blurb from the Beast that I love. A speedy catch and run receiver who can do more than he was asked to. How much more? And I think with the Patriots, with what they have in the receiver room, do they have a guy who is just a burner who my vision? The vision here is Kyle Williams and Zachariah Branch in the middle doing crossing routes and doing like synchronized swimming and football kind of stuff of like speedy, fast, reliable, hopefully reliable guys in the middle. And like, I feel like any guy coached by a Kirby Smart type like is used to hard coaching and gets it. And he doesn't seem like one of the Georgia guys whose heads aren't screwed on right. Like, he just seems like he's good and solid and smart. And I did this too. I don't know, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room of the rumor that the Patriots are going to trade for A.J. Brown after June 1. I had this thought of, like, my mindset should be that that's not a thing. So I think taking a wide receiver this high who is this good and this smart and a guy that you can potentially unlock and getting him as low as 108 was my mindset. And I think size-wise be damned. Patriots have done really well historically with small wide receivers that are speedy and smart. So I took Zachariah Branch at 108.
So this brings up two things for me. First off, this is a perfect point of just because you have a small, speedy guy on your team now does not mean that that you cannot pick a receiver who's in the similar mold. Now, and I'm not saying that they're necessarily the same player, but I feel like a lot of people are just like, well, you got Pop Douglas, so you don't need another small, fast receiver. It's just why is he an untouchable commodity? Nice player, yeah, but you know, it's one of those things where you can potentially upgrade
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see anything wrong with that. And as far as the AJ Brown of it all, I'm just going to go back to, they don't have a lot of receivers under contract going into next year, period.
Yeah.
So even if you have AJ Brown in the room, the 4th round pick that's costing you nothing in terms of cap space, in terms of, your dollars, it shouldn't make a difference. Now, it's a different conversation if we were talking about, drafting Denzel Boston or something like that, or Chris Brazel, or something like that up higher. But when you're in this, basically, truthfully, 4th round and beyond, dart throws. Throw a dart.
Can I tell you who was also available at 108? Who I thought about, and I want your insight on this player. And that player is Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. And can I tell you what scared me off out of Malachi?
He's 40?
No, it wasn't that. It was, who does he profile similarly to me?
N'Keal Harry.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, and it really is. Like his entire I think you can even say the N'Keal Harry, when you looked at the highlights, there were things like him catching the ball and then reversing field and outrunning, defenders and then trucking a guy to get into the end zone. Those things existed. Malachi Fields is literally a jump ball specialist. That's it. When you look at what he did, I'm not a tape cruncher or anything like that, but when you quote unquote look at the tape, that's what it is. That's what he does. That was his role on the team. So if you're taking a late round flyer on a guy, if you already have a room that you're comfortable with, but you're just like, we'll try this guy as a red zone threat, then that's a guy maybe you take a stab at. But he's not anybody who I have any. I'm surprised that he's being projected to be a 4th round pick, honestly.
Same.
I'm surprised that he's gotten the level of buzz that he has.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't separate. He's literally, he's strong at the catch point, and that's great. But in the NFL, that's a trait that, that can't be your only trait.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is like his size, his lack of speed. And so, like, when I sort of weighed the two, when I weighed Branch versus him, I was like, Branch seems like the exact kind of guy who's got his head on straight, who's speedy, and has done a whole bunch at Georgia. Like, that Georgia program, they relied so much on their wide receivers after getting 2 kind of lackluster quarterback years the last 2 years, and that he seemed to be a guy who always answered the bell. So I thought the Patriots needed a guy who was just going to be, I got it, we're good, don't worry about me, I got it, I'll figure it out. And they, like, this team needs, like, young guys who are going to be like, I got it, I know it, I figured it out.
Yep. All right, so I stood pat at 95. I did not trade.
Okay.
My trades are done for this draft. So
okay, great. Same with me.
At number 95 in the NFL draft, my New England Patriots took Oscar Delp, tight end from Georgia. Now, this is higher than a lot of things are projecting him, but on top of everything else, in this draft, there's a little bit of a run on tight ends. And so Delp was a guy who was on my list and one of my favorite tight ends in this draft, period. And so I maybe was a little bit aggressive in where I grabbed him. But I have a feeling, and I'm not basing this on anything, but I have a feeling that at some point in these middle rounds, like somewhere, not even middle rounds, but somewhere probably between picks 75 and 125, there's going to be a run on tight ends. And Oscar Delp's going to be in the midst of that. And it's an interesting tight end group because there are all kinds of, they come in all shapes and sizes. He's one of the really well-rounded ones. So when I'm looking at the tight end room, which, by the way, Julian Hill is the only tight end under contract after this year.
Yeah.
You're looking at a guy who could be a potential successor to Hunter Henry.
Mm-hmm.
So that was why I went with him at that spot. So I'm looking at guys who could possibly have a role, especially in these first 3 rounds, have a role and have an active role on the team in year 1 with a chance to leap into a larger role in year 2. That's kind of the trend that has happened.
That's very interesting. I need your listeners and your viewers to know, you and I did not talk about our drafts before we started.
We did not.
We did not. So I hopped in at 125, and we can talk about tight ends. And I love Oscar Delp. That, like, he seemed like a guy that if he was hanging around, he did not hang around in my draft. He went early because he's a guy I also like. Like, I think the trouble with him is comparing him to his predecessor in Athens, Georgia, of Brock Bowers, that you can fall into the trap of just like, oh my God, so he's Diet Bowers. But he's a guy I really like. He seems pretty well rounded for a tight end. And to kind of weave this into my pick at 125, I am looking at the clock as how long we're doing this podcast. So I'm also trying to do this like in an easy way. I with the 125th pick in the 2026 NFL draft, you can add the noise in it post if you want to, or you can do it and I can do it again. With the 125th pick in the 2026 NFL draft, Greg Cameron's New England Patriots select Dallin Bentley, tight end, Utah. We have talked a lot about this, about college teams that we like a lot in these podcasts. And one of the programs that I love, and now it means I'm going to have to like Michigan because of Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham's teams, they are mean and well coached. They don't screw around, and they play good football. They play fundamentally sound football. The thing about Dallin Bentley is this is an upside pick. This is a pure Elliott Wolf. Well, but this guy could do this pick. I don't know if that's how he actually thinks, but in my mind, that's how Elliott Wolf thinks about draft prospects. And I'll read you from The Beast, from Dane Brugler's The Beast. A zone monster. Bentley has a great feel for urgently sitting down, securing the catch, and then finding hidden yards as a tough-to-finish runner. He's highly efficient in his snatch-and-go body mechanics, although that focus doesn't carry over to crowded catch points. Low success in contested windows. He did a better job playing to his size as a run blocker in 2025, but his uneven technique leads to sustained issues and execution lapses. Yeah, he's young. He's going to figure it out. And Dane's takeaway is Bentley needs to become a more disciplined blocker to be trusted on a pro field, but his size, speed traits, and pass-catching talent are potential assets for an NFL team. You have Julian Hill on this team. Like, he's your blocker. He's the guy you trust with blocking downfield, and maybe you have something in the pass game that you can develop. Who knows? He's magic beans. But I wanted to take a tight end in my first 4 picks that could be a guy that grows into the role and kind of grows into that like Hunter Henry mold. So I took Bentley at 125.
All right, so I'm going to do 2 picks now because I made that trade. I had a pick at 104. So I'm going to do my 104 and then I'm going to do 125. And before I get into this, You heard me talk about my philosophy on rounds 1 through
Mhm.
3.
Mhm.
4 and beyond, I'm a draft for traits guy. I think that is, because you're right.
Same.
Magic beans is exactly what it is. So with the 104th pick in the NFL draft, my New England Patriots select Jalen Kilgore, safety out of South Carolina. Now, this is a guy. Now here's a guy.
Now here's a guy.
Had a 9.6 relative athletic score.
Oh, hell yeah.
He played nickel, box, and deep safety, and even at times played outside corner, and has some serious ball hawking talent. And the Patriots last year, they didn't have prescribed free safety, strong safety. They got rid of their strong safeties and went with guys that they could ask to do a little bit of everything. This is a guy who's got size, he's got speed, so there's also some special teams potential there. I mean, the way that this guy is built, he is solidly built. He's like 6'1", like 205 or something like that. For a safety, that's, it's not anything that's like, we're not talking one of these. Whoa, there it goes again. Sorry.
I love it so much.
But
the Pittsburgh Steelers select. Yeah.
So I'm going to go on now that I think that was them playing me off here. So I'm just going to go right into 125. Now, 125, the Chris Mazza New England Patriots selected Markel Bell out of Miami, tackle. So you can say I beefed up the tackle depth with some serious beef. Like, this guy is 6'9", 360 pounds. I'd say that the lazy man's comp is Trent Brown. They need the depth at tackle with Morgan Moses aging, and there's not a lot behind them. They do have, like I said, they signed a veteran to kind of swing between him and Will Campbell. But this is your developmental piece, and if he's a guy who can develop into either, now he played left tackle at Miami, so if he's that guy who can develop into that swing tackle, that's not a bad option. And in the best case scenario, he makes the transition over to right tackle, and you have a right tackle of the future. Now, of course, magic beans, but just again, traits. This guy is just a mountain.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of it, of like, how do you, not to go full Sound of Music of like, how do you solve a problem like Maria, but how do you solve a problem like the successor to Morgan Moses? Well, do you find another mountain of a man to take over that position? And I think in both of our drafts that was sort of our mindset of, how do we find somebody who is ginormous, who is a good blocker and plays responsible football, like, to fill that role? I mean, I think
you look traditionally too in the Patriots, especially those units that have been led by Josh McDaniels. You have the smaller, athletic left side, and then the bulky, right side that you run behind. So this fits that mold.
Yeah, he seems like a perfect running buddy for Michael Wenning. Of cool, we are twin mountains. All right, so you did your 2. My next pick is at 131. If you want to play the sounder, you can.
There we go.
Greg Cameron's New England Patriots select Kyle Lewis, linebacker out of Pittsburgh. Kyle Lewis is small. For a linebacker, he is small. But he is damn smart. And is I gotta go back. I gotta go back between photos. I took photos from the Beast for some of my picks. And what Dane Brugler said, he was the 7th graded linebacker in the Beast. Not a traditional linebacker, but has a chance to shine given the right vision. Does this Vrabel, Cowden, stretch version of the Patriots seem like a group that is the most hear me out front office in football? Of, you know what? He can do stuff. Why don't we figure out what it is that he can do? We'd rather have him play for us than play against us. And I think a guy who plays for a hard coach like Pat Narduzzi at Pitt can certainly withstand the environment here in New England, certainly take that kind of coaching. But I just think that, like, how I looked at this of let's find as many smart football players as we can. Football smart and like book smart players as we can throughout this entire draft. And I think the fact that he's, a 6'1" in the 220s kind of linebacker, the game is moving that way at this point. The Patriots need to kind of modernize that way. And if he's a guy who gets opportunities to be next to a guy like Robert Spillane, who's as smart of a linebacker as there is in football, and I think that he's going to be a kind of guy who can kind of absorb that like a sponge and really take that to heart.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I was also just trying to look up to see, it's because some guys that I was thinking of that are comparable, he's even smaller than them. Like I was thinking, Christian Ellis is somebody who I thought is a little bit, but he's about 6'2", 235. Then I was thinking about somebody like a Drew Tranquil, who also is bigger. He's even
and good.
He's on the smallish side. So, but I think that that's kind of the idea that you could go with is, somebody who is alongside Robert Spillane type.
Yeah. They need a guy like who can be Spillane's running buddy in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, how I look at this is that, like, the Patriots need as many smart guys in the room as they can get, because they've got that big, huge defensive line, and then their linebackers can just be guys who are smart and have figured out, like, oh, okay, this is what this is. Okay, we'll stop it here. And I think a guy like Kyle Lewis, I love that, of like, he's small, but if somebody has the vision to figure out what he can do, that he like has the board dropped and he was there, that it felt very much of a guy who was just like, I don't know, we should just have, like, it'd be much easier to have this guy playing for us than playing against us.
Right.
That's how
Similar idea. There are a couple of linebackers like that in this draft. Another one that we both like as well is Harold Perkins. He's a guy who they never really figured out in college, where he should be.
No.
Is he an edge? Is he, they've got, I think they call it the star role, which is kind of like a hybrid role, kind of a safety, kind of a linebacker, where does he kind of fit in? And now he's not as small as Lewis is, but it's the same kind of idea that, okay, if this guy gets in the right spot, he can be very good. The question is, what is that spot? You have to have a vision for the guy. This isn't a plug and play kind of player.
No, and like who the initial archetype of that guy at this size, like Kyle Lewis is a guy who didn't really pan out in the NFL, certainly initially, is Isaiah Simmons, who the Cardinals took, I think, in the first round, who was a smaller linebacker, safety, kind of hybrid. Sounds a lot like Marte Mapu, but like, I kind of just feel like the Patriots in this administration just want smart football players who aren't going to screw around and take coaching well. It's hard to play for a guy like Narduzzi. It is. It's hard. He's a bit of a hard ass, to excuse my French, but like is the kind of guy who like expects a lot of his teams. Like that's why those Pitt teams they're not it's very similar to you took a player from South Carolina
Mm-hmm.
and a guy who plays for like a Shane Beamer and Pat Narduzzi. It's very similar of guys who just get it, who get what coaching is and understand like, okay, this is my job. I'm going to do it. And for me, Kyle Lewis just seemed very much like he does not fit the Bill Belichick archetype of a linebacker. But for me, he just seemed like the most do your job guy that was sitting there at 131.
All right. At 131, this is where I took my swing at wide receiver. With the 131st pick in the NFL draft, Chris Mazza's New England Patriots select Dazon Stribling from Ole Miss. Now, this guy, again, traits. This guy has all the traits that sound great for a quarterback who likes to throw to big guys with big catch radiuses. He's 6'2". He's somewhere between 205, 210. He ran a sub 4.4 in the 40, and he's got good hands. I think like his drop percentage was like 1.3 or something ridiculous like that. Yeah. The issue, and I think why he's not more thought of in this draft, is he's kind of a one-trick pony. He's a vertical threat. That's it. So if they can develop him to have more of a diverse route tree, you could have a find here. But he's kind of a guy who, even if he is that field stretcher, how long have we been talking about? Oh, we need a consistent field stretcher. We hope that Kyle Williams will be that guy, but just because you hope Kyle Williams would be that guy, I won't shy away from taking a swing at another guy who could be that guy.
He's a guy. So my weird draft, I took him at 131, and it was overdrafting him at 131. By the way, and he's because I think they did a 30 visit with him.
I think so too. Yeah.
And that was sort of something I was trying to like figure out, like guys who I know that they like, who they've met with and they've talked with. Stribling, because again, like where I was and how I thought, I try to do this when we do this podcast every year. I try to think almost a little bit of the opposite of how you are going to think. It's a much better podcast if we do things differently. But he's a guy in this draft I love. Like, traits are off the charts for the Patriots and what the Patriots need. And again, he's another guy who, like, the coaching he took in college is rigorous. Say what we want about Lane Kiffin. We can be here for hours talking about Lane Kiffin. But that program for, like, offensive players has been kind of awesome in the last several years, of like, especially for receivers and offensive players. And I think just like he seems like I'm like, this is the best compliment I can give Strickland is if the Patriots don't draft him, I know who will draft him, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to turn him into they're going to turn him into something that, like, they're going to turn him from nothing into something. And that's one of those things that scares me a little bit about a guy like Stribling not taking him, is that somebody's going to turn him into, is going to like rock tumble him a little, like smooth off his edges and turn him into like, oh cool, here's the platonic ideal of like a like secondary wide receiver on your team. You want a guy like this.
So when you're talking Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm thinking, is this a potential Martavis Bryant without the off-field stuff that destroyed his career?
Yeah. or like who's a guy who I liked coming out of that draft? Who this was Limas Swede was a guy who very similarly who I liked coming out of the draft. I was like, okay, the Steelers are going to take him. He's just going to like, sit up and fly right kind of guy. But like, he just seems like a guy that some team's going to take him and they're going to iron out his wrinkles. Just be like, hey, this is what we do here. And I hope that it's here in New England, but like, after taking Branch at 108, Stribling was kind of sitting there at 131, and I was like, I'm not going to do a real weird draft where I take 2 wide receivers in my top 4 or 5 picks, but he's a guy I love in this draft.
All right, so where are you going next?
My next pick is at 171st overall. Greg Cameron's New England Patriots select center out of Dartmouth, Delby Lemieux out
You
of
told me this wasn't
Duxbury,
going to get weird.
Massachusetts. I did tell you this wasn't going to get weird. The Patriots need an inside offensive lineman. And at this point in the draft, let me tell you, man, it is a Dartmouth guy. And I just think that at some he played tackle in college, and then the projection is that he's a center. Maybe he's a guard. Maybe he's who knows what he is. It's Magic Beans. It's 171. Again, I keep quoting this, and I should attribute it correctly to Steve Dangle, who's a Maple Leafs podcaster and vlogger. He's very good. He does these trade tree videos, and he uses the term Magic Beans of oh, they traded for a draft pick in this trade tree. It's Magic Beans. You don't know what it's going to be. And I think the fact that you take a local kid from Duxbury, he grew up rooting for the Patriots. Maybe he's something. Maybe he's a special teams piece. Maybe he's a backup guard center. Maybe he's the next Ben Brown. You don't know. At 171, you can take swings like this.
I only wonder if you're looking into interior line, a guy who's been a tackle and moves to center, usually that happens because they're not big enough to play guard. So basically you're drafting a one position depth piece there. And I wonder, it's just something I wonder about if they would take a guy who would be a developmental center, who probably wouldn't have a major role backing up another position. That's my only question with that.
I'm so glad you brought that question up, because I'm going to give you a counterpoint. My counterpoint puts us in the DeLorean. We are going to gun it to 88, and we're going to go back 1 calendar year. Chris Mazza, who was our draft crush last year that we both loved on the offensive line, who was not Will Campbell?
Tell me, because I'm
Willie Lampkin.
Oh, no.
Out of North Carolina.
Let's clarify that. Willie Lampkin was your. You waxed poetic for about 10 minutes about Willie Lampkin.
But maybe a fella out of Dartmouth named Delby Lemieux is the new Willie Lampkin. Willie Lampkin in preseason was destroying dudes. Why can't the Patriots get a weird small school guy who could potentially destroy dudes?
Fair enough.
Give me Delby Lemieux at 171.
So do you want to do? So I traded 171. So do you want to do your 191?
I will do my 191. Greg Cameron's New England Patriots select Andre Fuller, cornerback out of Toledo. And I felt like at this point it was let's find some depth, certainly on the defensive side. My next two, my pick at 198 was very much a depth pick as well. But I can't also lie that it was also a fun name at the same point. And I think, a 6'2" corner out of Toledo. Toledo has produced some pretty good defensive backs. One of the guys that I know that we both like is Emmanuel McNeil Warren, who's going to be one of the safeties, certainly in the first 2 rounds. And Toledo has had some pretty good players, certainly at defensive back the last several years. And so I wanted to kind of figure out of maybe a guy that you can bring in to sort of be a depth corner, has some size, and Fuller at that point in the draft just seemed like a guy who was kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. Not because he's tall or anything, but because sort of need and sort of what I was trying to figure out for depth purposes.
All right, so for me at 191, the New England Patriots select Adam Randall, running back out of Clemson. Now,
I get him at 202 in my draft, by the way.
So we
can talk about him now, though.
Can always use some running back depth. The thing is, again, we're looking for traits, and this is a guy who is a converted wide receiver, so he would offer something in the passing game that, truthfully, their best pass catching back on the roster right now is Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
You haven't seen much of anything at all from Travion Henderson in that regard. They tried some screens to him. It's just not his game. This is a guy who offers something a little bit unique. And you throw in him into the mix with your Land Larisons and such and see what shakes out. He's big. He's a big guy. He's 6'2", 230 pounds, and I can't help but think that there's also the potential that a guy like that, especially a guy who has a wide receiver background and is used to operating in open space a little bit, could have a kick return role as well. Now, the third running back pretty much operated as the primary kick returner in Mike Vrabel's program last year. And now Antonio Gibson wasn't as tall, but he was also a big framed former wide receiver turned running back that was their returner. Now, the difference is at one point in time, Antonio Gibson ran a sub 4.4 and Adam Randall ran a 4.5. So, not that Randall was slow, but it's not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. But when you look at, they were throwing Jennings back there, and such, who was the other? They had another third running back that they had. They were throwing back there sometimes. But who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
his name's escaping me. Yeah,
I do.
Whoever the third running back was handling those loads. So, it's a dart throw, and you put him in a room with the other guys, let them fight it out. Do the whole Heath Ledger Joker thing. They're going to have tryouts.
Totally.
Break the pool cue, and leave them to it.
He's a guy too. Like everything you said about Adam Randall is exactly how I feel. The wide receiver background is really intriguing. They need a pass catching back, and they haven't really had one who's a true pass catch, can catch out of the backfield and scamper up the field, since a guy who has a much different profile in Dion Lewis. And even going further back than that, a guy like a Shane Vereen. But I think them having a guy who's a bit bigger, a bit thicker, and can catch the ball and make things happen, that seems like a perfect weird chess piece for Josh McDaniels. He's a guy
Randall's
I think.
Sorry, just pointing out, Randall's another guy who had a 30 visit with the Patriots.
Perfect. That's a perfect that seems like a guy that they're interested in, and maybe they're more interested than us at both 191 and 202. But he's a guy I really like that Clemson offense. And you and I kind of talked in previous drafts about running backs out of that really RPO system that Clemson employs. We had liked a couple of years ago Will Shipley, who was in the draft, who has similar traits, but certainly doesn't have the size that Randall does. And so I think that the Patriots could use a guy who they can use as like a jack of all trades. They can move him all over the formation. That could be a really fun chess piece for Josh McDaniels to use. I took him a little later than you did, but I also took him. I took him at 202. We don't have to do the chime in.
All right. So, but we will do the chime in for 198.
Oh, are you ready? Craig Cameron's New England Patriots select Dante, the Godfather Corleone, defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. I had to take a fun name, guy. I mean, Delby Lemieux is a fun name, but Dante Corleone at 198. They name him the Godfather. He is a space occupier. They need somebody to take over that Tonga role of big dude in the middle. And Corleone could develop into being that guy. That's what
So for me, thinking along the same lines, Chris Mazza's New England Patriots select Nick Barnett, defensive tackle, South Carolina.
Yes.
Again, the same idea. They need somebody to take those Kairos Tonga reps. You know, there are a lot of this was kind of the inverse for me of the edge discussion, where I kind of looked at it and was just like, well, do I want this is a deep class. Do I want the top of the class, or do I want, or can I settle? And with defensive tackle, I settled because I had a harder time investing a higher pick, and your pick went way earlier than I was comfortable taking a defensive tackle, but he was on my mind too. I'm not taking, I'm not using a lot of resources on somebody who at most is probably going to log 40% of the snaps, you know?
Yeah.
So this is a guy who can fill that. God, I gotta stop with that. I'm on this. This is a guy thing now.
Here's a guy.
I'm channeling, but he is one of those. I think he's kind of a high ceiling player as far as this is concerned. If he can refine his pass rush, then he can have a little bit more disruption in the middle. But in the meantime, he can just eat that space. All right. I'm also going to move right along to 202 since you already revealed your 202 pick.
I did.
Okay. And here's my edge double dip. With the 202nd pick in the NFL draft, Chris Mazza's New England Patriots select George Gums of Florida.
A fun name,
total traits guy. This is just a total looks, because he has the look of an NFL edge rusher. But the thing is, he's only been playing on the edge full time for 3 years. So he's got a lot to learn. He's got the physical tools, but he's that lump of clay, because he actually, when he entered college, he walked on at a small school as a wide receiver / tight end hybrid.
Wait, what? That's awesome.
He walked on as a wide receiver tight end hybrid. He's the developmental edge prototype that you're looking for late in the draft.
Yeah.
And you're going to love this. PFN does the comparisons with players who measured and tested similarly at the combine.
Uh-huh.
Take a guess who one of his comps was.
Is it Vince? No, wait, edge guy. Is it Ty Warren?
Edge guy. No. Mark Anderson.
Oh, hell yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So you did have yes, you did have a 112 or a 212 pick, correct? You didn't trade that one away?
I did not trade 212. I did trade 247. Greg Cameron's New England Patriots selected 212. Cade Klubnik, quarterback, Clemson. It is good business to take a quarterback in every draft. That's what Bill Belichick thought. It's what I thought. It's what I think a lot of other teams think of. Again, magic beans. Your backup quarterback for the New England Patriots right now is Tommy DeVito, an Italian stereotype who, I'm sorry, our shared culture is not his costume. But I'm also talking about his agent, Sean Stellato, too. But I think the Patriots need a third quarterback, especially in camp. Klubnik was a guy who people initially at the beginning of the year thought could be a Heisman candidate, could be this, could be that. But they also thought the same thing about Clemson. It could be this, could be that. And the fact that he was sitting there at 212, I didn't want to overdraft a guy who I like in this draft as a developmental quarterback late in the draft, in Luke Altmaier from Illinois. I like you can kind of tell just how I'm talking about a lot of these different programs of like programs that I like, of like coaches who run good programs. Like you were talking about like South Carolina guys. I like what Shane Beamer does in South Carolina. And I think Clemson, like there isn't many other hard ass coaches in the NCAA quite like Dabo Swinney left. And then I think that like if you're a quarterback and you can work in that system, regardless of sort of the systems, you know what hard coaching is like. And you know what like a demanding offensive system is, like a place like Clemson. So I think that with the final pick in this draft, I took a quarterback who was sitting there, has some upside, maybe is the exact kind of guy like a Joe Milton that you can trade for something later, but a guy that you could maybe like build into something too if DeVito's not the guy as your backup quarterback. So I took Cade Klubnik at 212.
All right. I thought about a quarterback at this point in the draft. I didn't like the options that were left available. So I went in a different direction. There are a couple of guys who I looked at who, when I was looking at quarterbacks, Tommy DeVito obviously does not mirror the playing style of a Drake May. So when I was looking at the third quarterback, it's just like looking for a guy who could be like that kind of similar, at least physical profile. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to take any of those guys who were left in the 6th round. We can throw a priority UDFA at them. Mm-hmm. So where's my music?
There it is.
It's getting tired too.
Yeah.
At 212, this is probably my biggest dart throw of the night. Took another intriguing size speed combo at wide receiver. A man who had a 9.99 relative athletic score. Mm-hmm. Tops among receivers. Mm-hmm. He stands at 6'5", 215 pounds. Ran a 4.31. Had a 42-inch vertical and 11.2 broad jump. That man is Jeff Caldwell out of Cincinnati.
Interesting. Not a guy I have on my board.
Just a total, you're just talking tools for days.
Size, speed, freak.
He was a guy who, he's on the freak list, and he's totally raw. I mean, this is a guy, he played 1 year of, this is a guy again. I'm sorry, everybody. He played 1 year of football at Cincinnati, and before that he was at a small school where he had something like 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns or something ridiculous like that. His production obviously fell way off once he got to a program that was much more challenging, and the level of competition was much more challenging. But you just look at the physical tools and hey, why not? This is I always like the story of when Ernie Adams made the pick for Trey Nixon. And the way that the story goes is that, when he got to the facility and he met Ernie Adams and learned that Ernie had made the pick, he says, "Yeah, Ernie, why did you select me?" And Ernie says, "I wouldn't read that much into it."
Awesome. Awesome. An awesome quote from the Phillips Andover new head coach.
So this is I wouldn't look too much into it, except for the fact that the guy had a 9.99 relative athletic score.
Maybe he's something, maybe he's nothing.
Why not?
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so do you have a pick at 247?
All right, so we had... No, I traded 247 as part of my first draft. So we are complete with our drafts.
We are done.
We have completed another marathon. This is, of course, gone on for what will be 2 episodes. So thank you for helping me fill my time.
Of course.
And but it's also, as I've aged considerably over the past year or so, I've mostly, thanks to the fact that I have a daughter with serious attitude, but I've found that my endurance for these marathon sessions wanes. So
yes,
I'm just going to give you the opportunity now to make any parting shots or any parting thoughts before we say goodnight.
Yes, I would like to make one parting shot, and that's in memory of our friend and mentor and local journalism hero, Gary Brown. We didn't do the normal pod like we normally do, by position and then a fun name. Right. I feel like you and I have the same very fun name in this draft. And so I'm going to say how I think it's said, and you can say it another way. My favorite name in this draft, and this is how I think we ought to toast to our friend Gary and make sure that he's doing well somewhere in the great beyond. And that name is Ephesians Prysock, a corner out of, I believe it's Washington?
Yes, out of Washington.
And the other fun part is the other corner there is named Tacario Davis. So excellent. As you're going through the NFL draft, you think of our buddy Gary Brown, and you think of the fun names. And I just want you to think about names like Ephesians Prysock.
It's great. It's right up there with the St. Brown brothers.
Oh, got the Amon-Ra and
Equanimous.
Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue, Equanimous.
It does.
But yes, yeah. So excellent. I'm glad we were able to fit something about that in. I realize, format's a little different this year, but I'm glad that we were able to toast Gary Brown all the same. So thank you for making sure that we fit that in.
Of course.
All right. So, of course, the NFL draft is fast approaching, and I will be texting you furiously if I manage to stay awake long enough to to see them trade out of the first round, Bill Belichick-style.
This is what I want as my first text as I get to Heathrow Airport and I'm jet lagged and gross and just a cruel, unshaven bastard at that point. So this is what I'm looking forward to.
All right, sir. Have a great night.
You too.
Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with us on this episode of the Maz's Musings podcast. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see how our picks pan out. And if you have your own picks, please feel free to let us know. A great place to share those with us would be at our new Facebook community, The Musin Place. And you can find that on our Facebook page or also on the website, mazasmusings.wordpress.com. And while you're there, you'll also be able to find past episodes and more about this podcast. You'll also find other ways to connect with us, but I'll shout those out right now. We're also on Instagram, Threads, and Twitter at Maz's Musings Pod. We are also on TikTok at Maz's Musings Podcast. We've got a Blue Sky, and we also have a YouTube page that I really would love it if you would subscribe to. Now, while you're also on the website, you can learn how to subscribe to our newsletter. And that comes in the inbox once a week, lets you know what's happening with this podcast, and we'll throw out some other interesting things that are going on that we think you would find interesting as well. Now, if you're looking for ways to support the podcast, obviously word of mouth is the best way. If you enjoy the podcast, let people know. You can also let people know how much you're enjoying it by going onto your favorite podcatcher and leaving us a rating or a review. And those will help us with those algorithms that make us more visible, more discoverable, and then more people can join this community. And while you're there, if you're looking to boost up your support just a little bit more, well, go to our website and you can buy us a blue milk. Buying us a blue milk is just a small, obligation-free way to help us with some of the small monetary costs that go into putting this podcast together. And whether you are buying us a blue milk or listening for the first time or anything in between, I appreciate the support. And I hope you have a great weekend and a great week. Music for the Maz's Musings podcast is brought to you by Hi Dad Soup. Check them out at Mickey and Minutes on Instagram.